A quiet evening, a rattling window, and a truth I never expected from a young man who could have just stayed silent. What he told me that night changed how I saw my own home. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. I'll take you back to the moment my son's friend tapped the glass, rain streaking the pane like ink, and asked to speak with me. Just me. It was a Thursday, the kind that carries a hush. Dinner plates were stacked, the house tidy in a way that makes you proud and a little lonely at the same time. My son Thomas was upstairs with his headphones on, the steady thump of music like a distant heartbeat. Outside, the porch light threw a pale circle across the hydrangeas. Then came the sound, 3 gentle taps at the side window by the kitchen sink. I pulled the curtain aside and saw Daniel, broad-shouldered in his school jacket, hair damp from the drizzle, eyes steady in that earnest way some boys learn early. He didn't wave. He didn't grin. He just looked up at me with a kind of clear purpose, the kind that makes you set down whatever you're holding. I unlocked the back door and let the night air in with him. "Is Thomas home?" he whispered. "He is," I said, "but I think you're here for me." He nodded. I offered a towel, and he took it with a thank you that sounded older than he looked. The kitchen light sketched everything in warm gold, the steam curling from the kettle, the neat line of spices by the stove, the water beating on his jacket. I poured tea because it gave my hands something to do. He stood at the edge of the rug, careful not to drip, like he didn't want to leave a mark. "I should have called," he started, then shook his head. "No, I needed to look you in the eye." There was no accusation in his voice, no panic. Only a seriousness I recognized from years of settling disputes, lost homework, and scraped knees. I pulled out a chair. He sat, folding his hands, and I saw the way his thumbs pressed together, nervous but steady. "I owe you honesty," he said. "And Thomas, too. But I don't think he's ready to hear this first." The kettle clicked off. The house seemed to listen with me. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. I set a cup near him and another for me, the faint clink of porcelain the only sound between us. "Last week," he said, "I borrowed your car without asking." My breath caught, but I kept my face open. I've learned that the first reaction can build a bridge or burn it. He hurried on. "Thomas was supposed to drive us to practice, and he dozed off. I knew you were at work, and the keys were on the hook. I thought, 5 minutes, straight there and back. It was wrong. I knew that even then. On the way, a delivery truck swerved in the rain. I braked hard. No one was hurt. There's no scratch. But the way my heart jumped." He paused, swallowing. "I haven't slept right since." The rain ticked on the window like someone counting time. It would have been easy to raise my voice, to count rules instead. But there was something in the way he sat at my table, asking to carry the weight properly. I remembered the years when Thomas couldn't look me in the eye after a bad grade, how a long exhale from me could open a door better than any lecture. "I'm grateful you told me," I said. "And grateful you're safe. You understand the risk." He nodded. "I do. That's why I came. I didn't want it living between us, like a draft you can't find." We sat with our tea. Steam rose, steady and calm. He told me how he pulled over after the close call and just breathed, hands trembling on the wheel. He told me he wanted to be the sort of person who returns what isn't his, including trust. "Thomas should hear this," I said softly. "He will," he answered. "I wanted to earn the courage first." I looked at this boy, no, this young man, and felt a quiet shift inside me. Sometimes honesty doesn't arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it knocks on the window in the rain and asks for a towel and a chair. I nodded toward the stairs. "Finish your tea," I said. "Then we'll ask him to pause his music." When Daniel finished his tea, we both sat in a silence that wasn't heavy but thoughtful. I could feel the rain easing outside, leaving the smell of damp earth drifting through the open back door. He looked at me, almost waiting for judgment, but I only saw a boy trying hard to stand tall in a world that often punishes honesty. I admired that he chose to face me, even when he could have hidden the truth and gone on as if nothing happened. "Let's talk to Thomas," I finally said. "He deserves to hear this, and I'll be here with you." Daniel nodded, his shoulders straightening with both relief and dread. I could see the courage it took him just to agree. We climbed the stairs, each step creaking softly beneath us, until we reached my son's room. Music thumped faintly from behind the door. I knocked once, then opened it just enough to peek inside. Thomas sat slouched at his desk, headphones halfway off, his phone lighting up his face. "What's going on?" he asked, his brow furrowing at the sight of us together. Daniel glanced at me. I gave him a small nod. He took a breath, walked in, and shut the door gently behind him. "Thomas," Daniel began, voice a little unsteady, "I need to tell you something I should have told you days ago." My son leaned back in his chair, suspicion flickering across his face. "All right, what is it?" Daniel told him the story, the car keys, the short drive, the near miss. His words spilled carefully, but with conviction, every sentence deliberate. I watched my son's face shift from confusion to disbelief, and then to quiet anger. His eyes darted to me, as if asking whether I already knew. I gave him a calm look, letting him know I had listened too. "You what?" Thomas finally said, standing up, his voice cracking with the force of it. "You could have wrecked. You could have gotten us both in trouble. My mom could have." He stopped himself, his fists curling at his sides. "I know," Daniel said softly. "That's why I came. I didn't want to lie to you. You're my friend. More than that, you're like a brother. I couldn't keep this from you." The room went quiet except for the rain dripping from the gutters outside. My son paced, his jaw tight, while Daniel sat still, bracing himself. Then Thomas stopped and turned, his eyes softer now. "You didn't have to tell me," he said, "but you did." Daniel's shoulders dropped, and I could see the weight he'd been carrying finally shift. Thomas looked at me, and then back at his friend, the lines of tension easing just enough to show he was listening. "You scared me," Thomas admitted, his voice quieter now. "But maybe that's what honesty does sometimes. It shakes you before it steadies you." The two boys stood there, a space between them that felt fragile but real, and I realized this was the start of something important, not just about a car, but about the kind of men they were trying to become. I stepped back toward the door, leaving them in that moment, because some lessons are theirs to finish without me. The next morning felt different, as if the house itself had absorbed the weight of what was said the night before. Sunlight broke through the curtains, laying soft stripes across the living room floor. I stood at the sink rinsing dishes, the rhythm of the water steady, but my mind replayed Daniel's trembling honesty and Thomas's first reaction, the anger, the pause, and then the shift. Thomas shuffled down the stairs, hair tousled, still half asleep but carrying something more serious in his eyes. He didn't speak right away, just grabbed a piece of toast and sat at the table. I poured him orange juice, sliding the glass toward him like I had done since he was little. "Mom," he finally said, Was I too hard on him? The question caught me. My son, who usually moved on from things quickly, was lingering in it. That told me last night mattered more to him than he wanted to admit. You were honest, I replied gently. Honesty can sting, even when it's deserved. But the fact that you're asking this tells me you care. He nodded, chewing slowly. He's my best friend. And I keep thinking, what if something had gone wrong? What if he got hurt, or worse? I wouldn't have forgiven him, but I also wouldn't have forgiven myself for letting him do it. I walked over and rested a hand on his shoulder. That's what trust is, Thomas. It isn't perfect. It bends, it sometimes snaps, but if you both choose to mend it, it becomes stronger than before. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned. I could see him hesitating at the gate, his hands shoved in his jacket pockets. Thomas stepped outside before I even called for him. For a moment, they just stood there, two boys on the edge of something larger than their years. I wanted to see if we were okay, Daniel said quietly. Thomas exhaled, kicking at the gravel near his feet. We're not the same as before. But I don't hate you. You told me the truth, even though you didn't have to. That counts for something. Daniel's eyes lifted, and I saw gratitude there, raw, unpolished, but real. Then let me make it right, Daniel said. Whatever you need, help with practice, with school, with anything, I'll show you I can be trusted again. The two of them didn't shake hands or hug. Instead, they walked side by side toward the basketball hoop at the edge of the driveway. The ball thumped against the pavement, each bounce echoing like a quiet truce. From the kitchen window, I watched them. The rhythm of their game returned slowly, passes becoming smoother, laughter breaking through now and then. It wasn't immediate forgiveness. It was something better. It was rebuilding. And as I stood there, the cool glass beneath my fingertips, I realized that what surprised me most wasn't Daniel's honesty, but the way both boys were learning to carry it. For the first time in a long while, I felt the house fill with a new kind of peace, one born from mistakes, confessions, and the choice to grow beyond them. The days that followed settled into a rhythm, though a quiet current of reflection ran beneath everything we did. Meals were shared with a little more conversation, doors opened and closed with a softer hand, and even Thomas seemed to carry himself with a new weight, less careless, more deliberate. It struck me that what began as a mistake had become a turning point, not just for Daniel, but for my son as well. One evening, a week later, Daniel's parents came by. They had heard about what happened, not from me, but from Daniel himself. His father, a man of few words, stood tall in the entryway, his hand firm on his son's shoulder. He told us everything, he said simply, his voice carrying both pride and disappointment. We've grounded him, of course, but we wanted to thank you for how you handled it. I looked at Daniel, who couldn't quite meet my eyes, his cheeks flushed. There was no anger in me anymore, only respect for the courage it took for him to face everyone this way. I invited them in, and soon enough, we were all sitting together at the kitchen table. The same table where Daniel had confessed days earlier, now warmed by shared stories and even laughter. It felt as though honesty had built a bridge between families, one that might not have existed otherwise. Later that night, after everyone left and the house grew still, Thomas came to sit beside me on the couch. He held his phone loosely, the glow of the screen fading as he set it aside. You know, he said, I think I learned more from Daniel's mistake than I have from any lecture at school. It scared me at first, but it also showed me what kind of friend I want to be. What kind of man I want to be. I turned to look at him, my heart swelling in that way only a mother's heart can, proud, tender, and a little fragile all at once. "That's the gift of honesty," I said. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it shapes what comes next." He leaned back, his head resting against the cushion, and for a long moment we sat in comfortable silence, the hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog filling the space. In the weeks that followed, Daniel continued to show up, not just at our door, but in the way he carried himself. He helped Thomas with homework, he apologized without excuses, and he worked harder at practice than I'd ever seen. Slowly, trust returned, not because it was demanded, but because it was earned. Looking back now, I realized that night. The knock at the window, the trembling honesty, the rain streaking down the glass, wasn't about broken rules or even fear. It was about courage, the kind that doesn't always roar but sometimes whispers, "I need to tell you the truth." And as I think of it now, years later, I know this memory stayed with me not because of what went wrong, but because of what grew right afterward. Trust rebuilt, friendships deepened, and the quiet lesson that honesty, even when it shakes us, is the very thing that steadies us in the end.